Mark had sworn off love. It wasn't a decision he made lightly, but rather one that had crept up on him quietly, over months of disappointment and heartbreak. He'd always been the kind of person who believed in second chances, who thought that love could heal, that it could be a source of joy and comfort. But after everything that had happened, he just couldn't bring himself to believe anymore. He was just done with all of that. The endless cycle of hope and letdown, the vulnerability, the feeling of being exposed, he'd had enough. Nights spent staring at the ceiling, replaying old conversations, wondering where things went wrong. It was exhausting, and Mark was tired. His last relationship had been a disaster. It started out with so much promise, so much laughter and connection, but it ended in shouting matches and slammed doors. The trust he'd built up over years was shattered in a matter of weeks. She left him for his best friend. It was honestly brutal. The betrayal cut deeper than he expected, leaving him questioning not just his judgment, but his own worth. He wondered if he'd missed the signs, if he'd been too trusting, too naive. Mark decided to focus on work instead. It was easier to pour his energy into something that made sense, something that rewarded effort and discipline. Work didn't lie, didn't leave, didn't break promises. He threw himself into his career and, well, he became a successful lawyer. The long hours, the challenging cases, the respect of his colleagues, these became his new sources of pride. He built a reputation for being reliable, for always getting the job done. Promotions came, and with them, a sense of validation. Mark's name was on the door, his opinions mattered, and people looked up to him. In the world of law, he found a sense of control that relationships had never given him. Work kept him busy, and it kept his mind off things. The constant deadlines, the never-ending stream of emails, the late nights at the office, they all served as distractions from the ache he still felt deep down. He dated casually, but nothing serious ever came of it. There were a few dinners, some coffee dates, even the occasional movie, but Mark always kept his guard up. He never let anyone get too close. Sometimes he'd scroll through dating apps late at night, half-heartedly swiping, but it all felt empty. The conversations fizzled out, the connections never quite sparked. It was as if he was just going through the motions, not really hoping for anything to change. He just wasn't ready to open his heart again. The wounds were still too fresh, the memories too vivid. He'd look at old photos sometimes, feeling a pang of nostalgia, but he always put them away before the sadness could overwhelm him. One day, his coworkers tried to set him up on a blind date. He, reluctantly agreed. The date was awful. He spent the whole evening wishing he was anywhere else, counting down the minutes until he could leave. She spent the whole time just talking about herself. Mark barely got a word in, and when he did, she barely seemed to notice. It was clear they had nothing in common, and he left feeling more alone than ever. Mark just wanted to go home. He realized, as he walked out into the cool night air, that he didn't miss dating at all. The awkward small talk, the forced laughter, the pressure to impress, it all felt pointless. He decided that love really wasn't for him. Maybe some people were meant to find their person, but Mark was starting to believe he wasn't one of them, and strangely, he was okay with that. He was better off alone. There was a certain peace in solitude, a freedom in not having to answer to anyone, in not having to worry about being hurt again. At least he had his work. It gave him purpose, structure, and a sense of accomplishment. In the quiet moments when the office was empty and the city lights glowed outside his window, Mark felt a kind of contentment he hadn't known before. That, he figured, was enough. For now at least, Mark was content to keep his heart closed off, safe behind the walls he'd built. Maybe one day things would change, but, for now, he was at peace with the life he'd chosen. Mark was, a creature of habit. Every Saturday, he went to the same diner for breakfast. It was this small, cozy place with checkered floors and those classic red vinyl booths. He always ordered the same thing, 2 eggs over easy, bacon, toast, and black coffee. The waitress, a bubbly older woman named Martha, knew his order by heart. But one Saturday, Martha was off. A new waitress was covering her section. Her name was Abini. She was from Nigeria. She had this warm smile and a melodic accent. Mark barely looked up from his newspaper as she approached his booth. He just kind of mumbled his usual order, expecting her to write it down. Instead, Abini surprised him. Abini didn't just take Mark's order, she engaged him. From the moment she approached his table, there was a warmth in her presence that seemed to fill the small diner. She greeted him with a bright, genuine smile that made the fluorescent lights overhead seem a little less harsh, and the morning a little less ordinary. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity, as if she truly wanted to know more about the man sitting before her, not just what he wanted for breakfast. 2 eggs over easy? You must really like your yolk runny, she chuckled, her voice lilting with a playful tease. The way she said it, with a twinkle in her eye, made it clear she wasn't just making small talk. She was inviting him into a moment of shared humor, a brief connection that went beyond the usual customer-waitress exchange. Her laughter was light and musical, echoing softly through the diner and drawing a few glances from other tables. Mark, caught off guard, looked up. He wasn't used to waitresses chatting with him, especially not about his egg preferences. Usually breakfast was a solitary affair for him, a quick meal before work, a time to gather his thoughts in silence. But Abini's approach was different. She seemed genuinely interested not just in his order but in him as a person. It was as if she could sense the loneliness that sometimes clung to him. And she was determined to break through it, even if only for a few minutes. But there was something disarming about Abini's smile. It was genuine and honestly, infectious. Her whole face lit up when she smiled, and it was impossible not to feel its warmth. Mark felt his guard slipping, the usual walls he kept up in public places beginning to crumble. He realized, almost with surprise, that he was smiling back at her, a real smile, not the polite, automatic one he usually reserved for strangers. He found himself explaining that he liked the yolk to soak into his toast. "It's the best part," he said a little sheepishly, "when the bread gets all soft and buttery from the yolk." He even mimed the motion with his hands, as if to show her exactly how he liked to dip the toast. It was a small detail, but it felt oddly intimate, sharing this little ritual with someone who seemed to care. Abini laughed, a bright tinkling sound, and said, "That's a good way to enjoy it. You know, in Nigeria we have a dish called suya. We dip bread in the spicy sauce. It's delicious." Her enthusiasm was contagious, and she described the flavors with such vividness that Mark could almost taste the smoky, spicy meat and the warm, crusty bread. She spoke of home with a fondness that made Mark feel as if he'd been given a glimpse into another world, one filled with family gatherings, laughter, and the comforting aroma of food shared among loved ones. Mark, intrigued, found himself asking her more about it. He usually hated talking about food, but Abini's passion was, well, just captivating. She told him about the bustling markets back home, the way the air would fill with the scent of grilling meat and spices, and how everyone had their own secret recipe for the perfect suya. Mark listened, captivated, feeling the distance between them shrink with every word. In that moment, the diner felt less like a stop on his daily routine, and more like a place of possibility, a place where a simple smile and a shared story could melt even the thickest of emotional glaciers. Weeks turned into months. Mark found himself looking forward to Saturdays more and more. He no longer went to the diner just for the food, though honestly, he had to admit, Abini had convinced him to try some Nigerian dishes, and they were amazing. He went to see her. They would talk about their lives, their dreams, their cultures. Abini told him about her big family back in Lagos, about the bustling markets and the colorful festivals. Mark, usually so private, found himself opening up to her about his family, his work, even his past heartbreaks. Abini listened with empathy and without judgment. They were different in so many ways, yet they connected on a level that ran deeper than cultural boundaries. Their differences became a source of amusement and learning. Mark introduced Abini to baseball, a sport she found utterly confusing but entertaining nonetheless. Abini, in turn, taught Mark how to dance to Afrobeat music. Let's just say his 2 left feet provided much amusement. They shared stories about their childhoods, their families, their hopes and dreams. They learned from each other. Mark, used to the fast-paced, individualistic culture of New York City, was touched by Abini's strong sense of community and family. Abini, in turn, was inspired by Mark's determination and ambition. They challenged each other's perspectives, broadening their horizons and deepening their understanding of the world. One Saturday, Mark found himself staring at Abini as she took his order, her usual cheerful energy replaced with a slight weariness. "Everything okay, Abini?" he asked, concerned. Abini sighed. "My car broke down," she explained, "and the mechanic says it's going to be expensive." Mark, without hesitation, offered to help. He drove her to the garage, argued with the mechanic about the price, and even lent her money to cover the repairs. As he drove Abini home that day, he realized how much she had come to mean to him. He was falling for her, his heart opening up in ways he thought were lost forever. The following Saturday dawned bright and clear, the kind of morning that seemed to promise something special. Mark stood outside the little corner diner, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched a bouquet of sunflowers, Abini's favorite, their golden petals glowing in the sunlight. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of anticipation settle in his chest, and pushed open the door, the familiar jingle of the bell above announcing his arrival. Inside, the diner buzzed with the gentle hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes. Mark scanned the room, his eyes searching for her. There, in her usual spot by the window, sat Abini, her face illuminated by the soft morning light. As she looked up and saw him, her lips curved into a radiant smile, her eyes sparkling with surprise and delight. Mark approached her table, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure she could hear it. With a shy, hopeful grin, he extended the bouquet toward her. Abini's hands reached out, her fingers brushing his as she accepted the flowers, her laughter bubbling up like music. He slid into the booth across from her, nerves making his words catch in his throat. For a moment he simply looked at her, memorizing the way the sunlight danced in her hair, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. He wanted to say everything at once, but the right words seemed to tangle together. He paused, gathering his courage, feeling the weight of the moment pressing in. The world seemed to slow, the background noise fading as he focused on the woman sitting before him. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, determined to finally speak the truth that had been growing inside him for weeks. "Abini," he began, his voice trembling just a little. "I know this might sound crazy and maybe it's too soon, but I can't keep it to myself any longer. Every time I see you, my heart feels lighter. You make the world seem brighter, and I find myself looking forward to every moment we share." Abini's eyes widened in surprise, her breath catching as she listened. For a heartbeat she was silent, her expression shifting from shock to something softer, more vulnerable. The world outside the window seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them in their own quiet universe. Slowly she reached across the table, her hand trembling just slightly as she covered his. The warmth of her touch sent a jolt of hope through Mark, and he looked up to find her gazing at him with tears shining in her eyes. "I think I'm in love with you too, Mark," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and beautiful, a promise of something new and wonderful. In that moment, surrounded by the familiar sights and sounds of the diner, the clinking of coffee cups, the laughter of strangers, the aroma of fresh pancakes, the world seemed to shift. Time slowed, and everything else faded into the background. Their hands remained entwined on the table, a silent promise of what was to come. Their love story began not with grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but with a simple, honest confession in a cozy corner booth. It was a testament to the power of chance encounters, to the magic that can unfold in the most ordinary places, and to the unexpected ways in which love can bloom when we least expect it. Even the most closed-off hearts can be opened by kindness, courage, and a little bit of hope. And as Mark gazed out the window, sunlight warming his face, he realized that sometimes, love arrives when you're simply brave enough to let it in. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts or your own story in the comments below, and subscribe for more inspiring stories just like this one. Your support helps us bring more moments of hope and love to the world, so join our community and never miss a story that could change your day.